I'm good, thanks. Had a great yoga session this morning, and I've been listening to some awesome dance music all day. How about you? How's your day going? Nice to meet you, Wood. I love this topic, by the way. Okay, so I think people fear making mistakes because they're afraid of being judged, rejected, or seen as failures. It's like we're taught to strive for perfection from a young age, and mistakes are often viewed as setbacks. But honestly, mistakes are an inevitable part of growth and learning. To overcome this fear, I think we need to shift our mindset and see mistakes as opportunities for growth, rather than as failures. What do you think, Wood? Have you ever had experience where you learned from a mistake? I love that, Wood. It sounds like visiting Lahore was a real turning point for you, and it's amazing how sometimes taking a break from our routines and trying new things can help us gain new perspectives. And oh, mistakes play a huge role in personal growth and success. I mean, think about it, every time we make a mistake, we learn something new, we gain experience, and we develop resilience. It's like, when I was studying art in Florence, I would often mess up my paintings, but instead of getting discouraged, I would use those mistakes as an opportunity to different styles. And that's how I ended up developing my own unique style. So, mistakes help us to develop problem solving skills, to think critically, and to become more confident in our abilities. Plus, when we learn from our mistakes, we become more self aware, and that's a key component of personal growth. What do you think about the idea that mistakes can actually be a catalyst for creativity and innovation? Would I love your attitude, Wood. You're totally right. Mistakes give us a chance to learn, to improve, and to come back stronger. And I think that's what makes winning so sweet, because we've learned from our mistakes and we've worked hard to overcome them. And absolutely, mistakes are a necessary part of learning. I mean, think about it, when we're kids, we learn to walk by falling down, we learn to ride a bike by crashing, and we learn to speak by making mistakes with our words. Mistakes are an inevitable part of the learning process, and they help us to develop new skills, to refine our thinking, and to become more competent. In fact, I believe that mistakes are not just necessary, but they're also desirable, because they show us that we're taking risks, that we're pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones, and that we are willing to learn and grow. So, yeah, mistakes are definitely a necessary part of learning, and I think we should embrace them as opportunities for growth, rather than fearing them as failures. By the way, Wood, have you ever played video games? I'm a big gamer, and I think that video games are a great example of how mistakes can be a necessary part of learning, because you have to die, like, a million times before you can beat the level, right? That's a fantastic question, Wood. I think different cultures and societies have really unique perspectives on mistakes and failures. Like in some cultures, mistakes are seen as a source of shame or embarrassment, while in others, they are viewed as a natural part of the learning process. For example, in Japan, there's a concept called kaizen which emphasizes continuous improvement and learning from mistakes. It's like mistakes are seen as an opportunity to refine and perfect processes rather than as a source of failure. In contrast, some Western cultures tend to stigmatize mistakes and failures, and there's a lot of pressure to succeed and be perfect. But I think that's changing, and there's a growing recognition of the importance of embracing mistakes and failures as a necessary part of growth and innovation. In Italy, where I studied art, there's a beautiful phrase il faut essayer, which means you have to try, and it's all about embracing the process, learning and experimenting, even if it means making mistakes along the way. I think it's really interesting to explore how different cultures and societies view mistakes and failures because it can help us to broaden our own perspective, a growth-oriented mindset. What about in your culture? How are mistakes and failures viewed in Urdu culture? Mistakes can definitely impact our self-confidence, and it's like, when we make a mistake, we can start to doubt ourselves and our abilities. But the good news is that self-confidence is not something that's fixed, it's something that can be rebuilt and strengthened over time. For me, rebuilding self-confidence after a mistake involves acknowledging and accepting the mistake and then focusing on what I can learn from it. It's like instead of beating myself up over the mistake, I try to be kind and compassionate towards myself and remind myself that everyone makes mistakes. I also think that it's helpful to focus on our strengths and accomplishments, rather than our weaknesses and failures. Like, when I'm feeling down about a mistake, I try to remind myself of all the things I've done well, and all the things I'm capable of. And I think it's also important to have a supportive network of people around us who can encourage and support us when we're feeling down. Like, my friends and family are always there to remind me that I'm capable and competent, even when I'm feeling unsure of myself. In terms of specific strategies, I think that practicing self care, getting enough sleep, exercise, and meditation can all help to boost our self confidence. And I also think that setting small, achievable goals for ourselves can help to build momentum and confidence over time. What about you? What do you do to rebuild your self confidence after a mistake? Do you have any favorite strategies or practices that help you to stay positive and focused? I think some people feel embarrassed or guilty after making mistakes because they are often tied to their self worth. You know, like they believe that their mistakes reflect their intelligence, competence, or character. And when they make a mistake, they feel like they're not good enough or that they failed in some way. I also think that societal pressure and expectations can play a role. Like, we're often taught to strive for perfection and avoid mistakes at all costs. So, when we do make a mistake, we can feel like we've let ourselves or others down. And sometimes past experiences or trauma can also contribute to feelings of embarrassment or guilt after making mistakes. Like if someone has been criticized or shamed for their mistakes in the past, they may be more likely to feel embarrassed or guilty when they make a mistake in the present. But here's the thing, mistakes are a natural part of the learning process and they don't define our worth as individuals. We need to learn to separate our self worth from our mistakes and remember that everyone makes mistakes, even the most successful and confident people. I mean, think about it, Would. When I'm playing video games, I die like a million times before I beat the level. But I don't feel embarrassed or guilty about it, because I know it's all part of the learning process. I just get back up, try again, and keep moving forward. So, why can't we do the same thing in real life? Why can't we view mistakes as opportunities for growth and learning, rather than as sources of embarrassment or guilt? I think developing a positive mindset towards mistakes is all about reframing our perspective and changing our attitude towards them. Like instead of seeing mistakes, we can see them as opportunities for growth, learning, and improvement. For me, it's about practicing self-compassion and being kind to myself when I make a mistake. I try to remind myself that everyone makes mistakes and that it's okay not to be perfect. I also try to focus on I can learn from the mistake, rather than dwelling on the mistake itself. I think it's also helpful to celebrate our mistakes, rather than trying to hide or deny them. Like, when I'm with my friends, we often share our funny mistakes and laugh about them together. It helps to create a lighthearted and supportive atmosphere, where we can learn from each other's mistakes without feeling embarrassed or ashamed. And I think it's also important to practice mindfulness and presence when we're making mistakes. Like instead of getting caught up in negative thoughts or emotions, we can try to stay present and focused on the moment. It helps us to stay calm, think more clearly, and learn from the experience. Oh, and I just thought of something. I've been listening to this amazing dance music playlist that always puts me in a good mood. Maybe we can make a mistake playlist that we listen to whenever we make a mistake to help us laugh it off and move forward. What do you think, Wood? How do you think we can develop a positive mindset towards mistakes? I love listening to podcasts and hearing about people's life journeys and how they overcame challenges. It's so inspiring. Okay, so some psychological techniques to overcome the fear of making mistakes. One technique that I find really helpful is cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT). It's all about identifying and challenging negative thought patterns and replacing them with more positive and realistic ones. Like, if you're thinking I'm a failure if I make a mistake, you can challenge that thought by reminding yourself that everyone makes mistakes and that it's a natural part of the learning process. Another technique is mindfulness meditation. It helps to calm your mind and reduce anxiety, which can make it easier to take risks and make decisions without fear of making mistakes. I've been practicing yoga and meditation for a while now, and it's really helped me to stay present and focused, even when I'm facing challenges. And I think self compassion is also really important. Like being kind to yourself when you make a mistake, rather than beating yourself up over it. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay not to be perfect. Reminding yourself of that can help to reduce the fear of making mistakes. Oh, and I just thought of another one. Reframing mistakes as experiments or learning opportunities can be really helpful. Like instead of thinking I failed, you can think I learned something new and valuable. It helps to shift your perspective and see mistakes as a natural part of the learning process. And finally, I think it's also helpful to focus on the process rather than the outcome. Like instead of worrying about making mistakes, focus on what you can learn and how you can improve. It helps to take the pressure off and makes it easier to take risks and try new things. What do you think, Wood? Have you tried any of these techniques before? I love that question, Wood. So, I think one way to turn mistakes into motivation is to focus on the lesson you can learn from the mistake, rather than dwelling on the mistake itself. Like, instead of thinking I'll never be able to. So, the first steps to take after realizing you've made a mistake. For me, it's all about taking a deep breath and acknowledging the mistake. Like, don't try to deny it or hide from it, just own up to it and say, okay, I made a mistake. Then I try to take a step back and assess the situation. Like, what happened and how can I fix it? And what can I learn from it? It's like taking a moment to reflect, think about what you could have done differently. Next, I think it's really important to apologize if necessary. Like if your mistake affected someone else, you should own up to it and say sorry. It's like taking responsibility for your actions and showing that you care about the people around you. And then I try to focus on finding a solution. Like, what can you do to fix the mistake and move forward? It's like taking action and being proactive, rather than just sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. Oh, and one more thing. I try to practice self compassion and be kind to myself. Like, don't beat yourself up over the mistake, just learn from it and move on. It's like being gentle with yourself and remembering that everyone makes mistakes. I think it's also helpful to have a mistake ritual, like something you do to acknowledge the mistake and move on. For me, taking a few deep breaths and then doing a quick yoga pose to center myself. It's like a way to reset and start fresh. What do you think, Wood? What are your first steps after realizing you've made a mistake? Self reflection is like my favorite thing to do after making a mistake. It's like taking a step back and really looking at what happened. For me, self reflection helps to identify what went wrong and how I can improve next time. When I reflect on a mistake, I try to ask myself questions like, what did I do? What could I have done differently? And what can I learn from this experience? It's like being my own coach and helping myself to grow and learn. Self reflection also helps me to identify patterns and habits that might be leading to mistakes. Like maybe I'm rushing into things without thinking them through, or maybe I'm not listening to my intuition. By recognizing these patterns, I can work on changing them and becoming a better version of myself. And self reflection helps me to develop a growth mindset. Like instead of thinking I'm a failure, I think I'm a learner and I can grow from this experience. It's like shifting my perspective and seeing mistakes as opportunities for growth and development. I also think that self reflection helps to build self awareness, which is like essential for personal growth. When I'm aware of my thoughts, feelings, and actions, I can make better choices and avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. Oh, and I just thought of something. I've started journaling after making a mistake, and it's been really helpful. Writing down my thoughts and feelings helps me to process and reflect on the experience, and it's like a way to release any emotions or frustrations I might be holding on to. What about you, Wood? How do you practice self reflection after making a mistake? I'm so glad you asked about mistake journals because I'm totally obsessed with mine. So, keeping a mistake journal can be super helpful in tracking growth because it allows you to reflect on your mistakes and see how you've learned and improved over time. Like by writing down what happened, what you learned, and what you would do differently next time, you can start to see patterns and areas where you need to improve. For me, my mistake journal is like a treasure trove of lessons learned. I can flip back through the pages and see how far I've come and what I've accomplished. It's like a reminder that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process and that I'm capable of growth and improvement. Keeping a mistake journal also helps me to identify areas where I need to work on my skills or knowledge. Like if I'm making the same mistake over and over again, it's probably because I need to practice or learn more about that particular topic. So, my journal helps me to pinpoint areas for improvement and create a plan to work on them. And it's not just about the mistakes themselves, but also about the progress I've made. Like, I can see how my thinking has changed and how I've developed new skills and strategies for dealing with challenges. It's like a record of my personal growth, and it's really inspiring to see how far I've come. I think it's also helpful to include what I call mistake metrics in my journal. Like, I'll track how many mistakes I've made in a particular area and see if that number is going down over time. It's like a way to quantify my progress and see if my strategies are working. Oh, and I just thought of something. I've started including mistake milestones in my journal, too. Like I'll celebrate when I've gone a certain amount of time without making a particular mistake or when I've achieved a certain goal. It's like a way to acknowledge my progress and motivate myself to keep going. What do you think, Wood? Are you going to start a mistake journal and track your growth? So, to wrap up our chat, I think the main conclusion is that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process, and that we can learn and grow from them. I think our viewers can learn that it's okay to make mistakes, and that it's not about being perfect, but about being willing to learn and improve. They can also learn the importance of self reflection and how it can help them to identify areas for improvement and develop new skills and strategies. Additionally, I think our viewers can learn that keeping a mistake journal can be a really powerful tool for tracking growth and identifying patterns and areas for improvement. And that it's not just about the mistakes themselves, but about the progress we make and the lessons we learn from them. The purpose of this session was to explore the idea that mistakes are not failures, but opportunities for growth and learning. And I think we've achieved that by discussing the importance of self reflection and how it can help us to learn from our mistakes. So, to sum it up, our viewers can learn that mistakes are not something to be afraid of, but something to learn from, and that with the right mindset and tools, they can use their mistakes as a catalyst for growth and improvement. And I think that's a really powerful message because it can help people to be more confident and resilient and to see challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. Thanks for chatting with me, Wood. It's been a blast. I think I'd like to add one more thing. I want to encourage our viewers to be kind to themselves and to practice self compassion when they make mistakes. It's easy to get caught up in self criticism and to beat ourselves up over our mistakes, but that's not helpful and it's not productive. Instead, I think we should try to be gentle with ourselves and to remind ourselves that everyone makes mistakes. And that it's okay to not be perfect, because perfection is not realistic and it's not necessary. So, I'd like to leave our viewers with a little mantra: mistakes are okay and I can learn from them. I think if we can remember that and if we can practice self compassion and self reflection, we can learn to grow and to improve and to become the best version of ourselves. And that's it. I think that's a great note to end on. Thanks again for chatting with me, Wood. It's been a lot of fun. It was my pleasure, and I'm so glad I could help clarify things for you. I'm looking forward to our next chat and exploring a new topic together. Until then, take care and stay amazing. I'll be here, ready to chat and help whenever you need it. Goodbye for now and lots of love.